Be bold. Be heard. Welcome to Unmute Your Mic with your host, Jessica Bell. The views, information, or opinions expressed during the podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of Unmute Your Mic.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Unmute Your Mic. My name is Jessica Bell. I am your host from Kansas City, Missouri, as always, and I'm so excited for this episode. As you all know, for the month of September, I'm highlighting people, hometown heroes in Kansas City. These are people who I just kind of have known or saw on social media who are just doing some great things in our community. And so I wanted to take the time to highlight and really pay homage to some of the people who are doing things behind the scenes and in front of the scenes that we don't always get a chance to see. So I want to thank Kyle so much for agreeing to be on my podcast. If you could just introduce yourself and let us know a little bit about you.
For sure. Thank you, first off, for this opportunity. Giving a voice to the work that we do is definitely a huge thing. Not too many people they want to take the picture with us, but they don't want to talk to us, and I really appreciate you actually taking time out to, get the story behind, what it is that we really do. So kudos to you. But I am Kyle Hollins, the executive director and founder of the Lyrik Institution. We are a behavior modification-based program that allows our scholars to master in the creative arts. We have switched our mentor program into an internship. What we learned is that young adults just don't need the information. They also need to be held hand in hand, through some of these career paths and things like that. We're relational people. So the curriculum is not only culturally responsive by the teacher, but the actual origin of the curriculum itself is culturally responsive. So we just bring a different dynamic to behavior modification. We've been blessed to be inside of the KCPS. This is our second year being inside the KCPS. I've been blessed to be on drafted to Genesis School Board. So I'll be working with that team, on behind the scenes governance when it comes to Genesis, and just kind of building the organization. Man, it's just it's been a journey. It's been fun. Not all the time fun. No, I'm not gonna trick any business owner out here or any non-for-profit owner out here. It's not fun. It's not always fun, but it's fulfilling and it's rich, and it's allowed me to be in spaces that I thought I would never be in, that I shouldn't be in. Man, God is good. He's offered me a seat at the table at places that just if they only knew. And then what's funny is they do find out and they be like, I just never believed that about you. And,
I want to talk about that a little because you said it was a journey. And so I know so often we see people where they're at and we're like, oh my God, that's so awesome. You get to do all this stuff. But we rarely see what's happening behind the scenes, the blood, the sweat, the tears, the trial and error, and everything that happens in our life that gets us to, our finally moment, even though we're constantly growing and evolving. But can you tell us a little bit about, one, what made you start this nonprofit or this organization, but what are some of the things you kind of had to overcome to get there?
So I grew up in the 64130 area code, that like in the 90s and early 2000s. And if anybody knows, that was like the murder factory, right? We had ran the murder rate at that time. Kansas City did, we led the nation in the murder rate, and there was a certain zip code that had the highest amount of murders that were going on. And it was so crazy that it was everyday life. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't know it was a, crime wave or murder wave that was going on around me. I knew people were walking around with T-shirts on with people's faces on them, but it was just the norm. And growing up, in a split home, like, you're trying to figure out who you are at the same time as your community is trying to figure out who they are, and it's just it's in so much chaos that you just get kind of blindsided. So I ended up graduating high school homeless. Started getting in trouble. My mom is at the time was, the director of the Monty House, was a drug rehabilitation center. She was a psychologist and a therapist. And my dad was the sergeant in Jackson County Jail at the time, and I was a drug dealer, and toted guns and was in gangs and stuff like that. So life was just life was 64130. I grew up in the 50s and never really went to school inside the 50s. My mom was just one of those people that was like, Kyle, you're going to get an education. Matter of fact, she named me Kyle because she wanted me to get a job. That's what she told me. She was like, you're going to get a job. You ain't going to have no excuses. You're going to get a name. You're going to get a name that's going to get you a job. So because of that, I was hit by a car when I was like in the, third grade, which had me living with my dad. So the reason I'm saying all of that was I went from growing up in the city to being moved towards Raytown, where like the demographic was different. You know what I mean? I was going to school with white kids, and they weren't playing about education out there. Like you was gonna get this math, science, and arithmetic, and it was just so different. When I started getting in trouble, I ended up going back to the Kansas City school district, and it was just like a culture shock. It was an identity shift, and at the time, you're trying to figure out. At that time, every young man is trying to figure out who they are. You know what I mean? But not only that, I'm trying to figure out what I was as a black man. You know what I mean? What does that look like? And I didn't like what I saw when it came to my father, because it was like, there's not a lot of people like you, but there's a whole bunch of people like these people, and kind of took off down that journey. And I think I was about 15 years old when I was like really out there in the streets and stuff like that. I remember sleeping in my first abandoned car, I think about 16 years old. Them are my traumas. I struggle with abandonment and homelessness. I struggle with the constant idea of ever going back. So with that, I kind of just battled through life up until about 24 years old. I was incarcerated. I had called a Class C possession, and then I had a Class A and a B trafficking. I was sentenced to 10 years in the state penitentiary. I was blessed because there wasn't a remand on drug convictions at the time, so I was able to do a 4-month program. But lo and behold, a week before I was about to go home, they changed my Fed number, and then I was sentenced to federal. I went to the feds for conspiracy and felony possession. I had 8 counts, but the bigger counts were the conspiracy charge and the felony possession of a firearm and furtherance of a drug trafficking crime. So it was just a culture shock. It was a whole like going home one day to possibly not going home. I was facing 35 years, for that charge, and I was blessed to be able to get 90 months. And I think that's where I came in contact with the difference between knowing God and following God. And it was just one of those big pivotal moments in my life, when like God has to take it all away from you for you to realize the value of it, and things like that. And it was just one of those moments. But I got in a car. Just one of the things that just sticks out to me all the time is I got caught in a car with an AK-47 in the back of a rental car. And my probation officer asked me, he's like, Kyle, why you got this big old gun? Like, you can have anything in the world, but you got this large assault rifle. Like, why do you got this gun? And I told him, I was going to this after hours. And he was like, so make it make sense. You went to a place you knew you could possibly die at to have fun. And I'm like, whatever, right, man? You know what I'm saying? You don't know what I'm going through and all of this type of stuff. So he asked me again. He's like, Kyle, would you go into a bank knowingly being robbed? I'm like, nah, that's stupid. And he just kind of sits back and just stares at me, right? And then we're dialoguing some more. And he's like, Kyle, does your mom carry a gun? I'm like, nah, my mom don't carry a gun. She don't live the life that I live. And then he sits back and he just looks at me, right? And I knew he had me, but my young, 22, 23-year-old self was not allowing him to get me. But he ended up vouching for me, and I got sent to that 4-month program that was a drug treatment class, but they were doing cognitive behavior therapy. And it rocked me. It just exposed like my cognitions. It exposed my thinking process and there was no way for me to get outside of my thinking process without being interrupted. And we're sitting there one day, and the lady asks us a question, and this is when I was sold. It was forever this moment. She asks us, she says, who's worse, the pedophile or the drug dealer? And, you know, at that time, I'm like, the pedophile, duh, it does the most harm, right? I'm not letting her slide on that. Nobody in the classroom is letting her slide. And, she said, well, how many victims does a pedophile have? And, you know, we're like 50 and 60, you know what I mean, before their first arrest. And they're like, no, not even close, right? And so real quick, I just want to turn off my notifications. So she breaks it all down, and then she's like, Kyle, how many victims does a drug dealer have? And it's just like, at that point, I realized I was a whole monster. You know what I mean? Not even all the other stuff that I did, but like, it was like that point, it was like, there was no way I would have ever seen it like that. Like, in a million years, it was impossible for me to see it like that. And then I looked around and I realized that no, even I got it, but there were people in the room that was just like, they kept fighting it. You know what I mean? They kept wanting to buck and they kept wanting to explain and justify. So it just like, at that point, I realized like, my thinking was so skewed, and like what got me, at that point, it was like, what got me here? Like, how did I arrive? So I ended up finishing out the class, and then I get shipped to the feds. I was blessed to be able to go to a facility that had, you know, a variant of the cognitive behavior modification, which was Life Connections. And it was a 1.5-year program. So I went from 4 months to doing the 1.5-year program. Well, during the 1.5-year program, I think I was walking the track one day, and there was this big guy, and he was like whining to his cellie, like whining to his homeboy about his cellie, like how he couldn't kill him. He was whining, like whining. You know what I'm saying? Then I'm like, about that, like out of all things, and at that moment, I realized like we are all struggling. Like, we're struggling. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just me, and I'm trying so hard to get out of this cycle. And I called home one day, and my daughter, she was crying. It was her birthday. I had missed it. She was in buddy rooms all day, trying to just grapple with the idea of me being gone. This is probably about my 3rd, 4th year in. And I just realized I introduced my daughter to the same cycle I was trying so hard to get out of, you know. And, you know, that's why Lyrics is called Lyrics. My oldest daughter's name is Lyrik. And I realized, like, there's a bunch of Lyrics out here. There's a bunch of people kind of going through this cycle and not even being awakened. And I was just over it, you know. And I ended up working for the program that I had actually been a part of. And then I started teaching in the program that I was a part of. And then I had the lead job in the program. So what I did was I started studying everything from behind the scenes, how the structure of it was, where the forms, where the books came from, how the first retreat was, how to set up the staff meetings and the staff building sessions, and like the invoices. Like, I did my research, you know. And then what I did was I studied where CBT came from. And I started picking up psychology books and started studying there, you know, and stuff like that. I was an avid Christian by that time. I was standing on my faith. I started taking seminary classes at Midwestern. They actually had like professors come in and teach the class. So we actually got real credits for it. And so when I started creating the curriculum, it was an infusion of the two ideologies, and really good psychology explains God's principles anyway. It's not even like they're so polar. So created a curriculum. What I noticed was when I was in the 4-month treatment, remember I said, I was like, I don't understand why everybody else didn't get it. So what I realized was it was that same process when I was in the federal system. They just wasn't getting the information. So what ended up happening was that's where our culturally responsive curriculum comes from. I took the sciences of it, and then I broke it down into stuff that we know and we talk about, and it sounds like us and it looks like us. And what ended up happening was I ended up teaching my theory, my style of the CBT to a group called of Men of Influence, ran by Miss Rivera. They were probably graduating about 13 13 people out of 35. I graduated 32 with my first try, you know, and that's when it was like, I got it. Like, this is the thing, right? So I left there and then went to Arizona to take another cognitive behavior class. But this time I was going to more so learn their method of it, because I just needed, like, I treated prison like college, you know what I mean? Like, I was just constantly like informing myself. I went to college, I took some college classes, I took accounting and marketing. You know, like, I was trying to be strategic because I knew I didn't have time when I came home to pick up certain skills. So that's when I started working with the blue collar crime guys, you know, and the guys that did the non-for-profits and did the big corporations and ran the boards and stuff like that. And, you know, I just had a vow with God, like, yo, I'm gonna use this all for good. You know, I'm gonna use it. I'm gonna honor this. And you know, it's one of those moments, you know, when God called out to Samuel, you know, it was like, hey, we're like, or even Isaiah, you know, like when they're calling your name, it's like, yo, it's me. I'm here. Send me. You know what I'm saying? I came to that point where it was like send me. So he allowed me to go through like certain facilities and certain opportunities that literally like navigated me through like everything that I needed to be successful. So I was released in 2019 from Arizona Federal Penitentiary, Safford. In February, we LLC'd Lyrics in August of 2019. I want to say about September, we got our non-for-profit status. 2020, that was in 2020. 2021, the pandemic hit. We launched in 2021. We probably started out with $1,200 in beginning of 2020. At the end of 2021, we probably touched about 336,000. And then in 2022, we've been in schools. We've been, you know, it's been crazy, man. God has opened up so many doors. So many lives are being impacted by this work now. So.
And that's, I mean, your story is extremely impactful. I realized a certain part kept coming up, and it was like you were being called out or set apart from everybody that you were around. So you were like, I was getting it, but they weren't. And I was getting it, and they weren't. And so, you know, what is it that you think it was about you that made you not quit? Because I've actually worked in like juvenile detention centers and that kind of stuff. I have a huge heart for youth. And I noticed that sometimes you're working with certain youth that it's like you said, they don't get it, right? They don't get it. Or people think that certain children are almost like throwaways, like, oh, they're just never going to get it, or they're just never going to. And I don't believe in that. But I think there's always one or two people that you can tell are set apart. And so once you realized you were set apart, what was it that made you not give up or say, this is too much pressure, or this is too much weight on me? Like, why didn't you quit? Because sometimes you hear people get incarcerated, they come home, they start living the same lifestyle again, and then they end up back in the same situation. So what was it that made you say, like, I'm gonna keep going with this thing? Because like you said earlier on, this is not easy. The work you do is not easy. It's not a walk in the park. Anybody who's an entrepreneur knows that it's harder than having a 9 to 5. So, you know, why didn't you quit, and what keeps you going?
At first it was toxic. It was, I didn't want to go back to homelessness. It was toxic. Part of my abandonment was being the smartest person in the room. The smarter you are, the more people want to be around you. So what ended up happening was I learned how to weaponize my trauma and use my trauma instead of letting my trauma use me. And the power of the testimony, I realized, so I had a gift. I knew I had a gift. I knew I could lead. I knew how to talk. You know, I knew how to inspire. That I had. You know what I mean? I was just using it horribly at the time. But I knew I had it, but I didn't know how to create a life with it. You know what I mean? I didn't know how to create a life with it. And going to jail, for me, it was no going back. It was no selling no more dope. It wasn't. So what am I gonna do? You're like, what is the next mission? You know what I'm saying? And I felt like I'm not even gonna say I felt like it. I was designed for this. Like, I don't think people really understand like I was literally crafted for such a time as this, that many lives would be saved. Like, I don't know how else to put it. My dad was from the country. He ended up working for Jackson County Jail. That offered me the opportunity to see structure at a high level. We went to the Army. So now process and procedure was a big component. I worked day in and day out with his he was the first entrepreneur that I ever knew. He had a lawnmower business, so for his side hustle, and watching him navigate and negotiate, and my mom being in psychology, and she was running psychology measures on us when we were younger, and we I could read, and my mom had me doing hooked on phonics. You know what I'm saying? Like, there was no not summer school. You know what I mean? I took debate in high school and did it for 4 years and was really good at it. Played orchestra. That's a creative arts component. It's like, I can weave this all the way down to what I do right now. And I'm not no better than nobody else. We're all created just like this, like with purpose, with intentional, detailed purpose to do the mission in which we were created for. I think just the sheer drive at first was to never go back to being homeless. And I had a responsibility, and there was some work that needed to be done. And my work ethic, all of that. I ran a team of hustlers, you know what I'm saying? Like, I was kind of destined, and it was just like, I got to figure a way out. Like, I got to figure some type of way out. And I'm a super analytical thinker. So, like, when it came to carrying a gun, it was like, so how do I not carry a gun? Like, not carrying a gun happens 30 thoughts before you even pick up the gun. You know what I mean? So it's like, well, does my pay grade change? Do the people I hang out with change? I was so determined. You know what I mean? Like, and another great point was when everybody left when I got locked up. Like, that was the greatest gift. Being alone, and like, I didn't owe anybody anything to come back home. Like, I did my part. You know what I'm saying? Y'all left me. Shake your hands. It's cool. But I don't owe anybody anything now. You know what I mean? And I came home free. I came home free from people that I owe because they gave me commissary or sent money or picked up phones. I didn't owe a person a daggone thing. And when I came home, man, God was good. So I used to bond out and pay all these court fines and stuff like that, right? But I never pick up the money. So all that money goes somewhere, goes into the lost and found, like the Missouri lost and found, right? I came home and it was $2,500 there. I bought my first car with that. Like, God is that, like, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't need, like, so I just came out. I came out free to be able to do what I needed to do. I was motivated by my daughter. I had put it all on the line. I told people that this is what I was going to do, and everybody told me I wasn't. My own sister told me I wasn't going to do this. You know what I'm saying? Until she seen the first play, and she was like, "Kyle, don't let nobody ever tell you that, even me, that you can't do something." So it was the people that said I couldn't, and I wanted to be an executive, and I wanted to build something that I felt like I could pass down and create legacy for. And I was all for Black enterprise. When I was locked up, man, this is really, and I'm going to sum it all up. Really what it was I was afforded an opportunity. God blessed me with an opportunity to wake me up and put me around. Because when you go to the feds, you're in jail with the world. You're not in jail with Kansas City. You're in jail with the world. And he literally put me in a place to where I had access to Mozambique and, like Mexico. Like, I had full access to these type of thought processes. And like, I realized how valuable it was. And I'm like, I'm going to create. And we're going to wake some people up, and people going to be saved, and people going to change their lives. Like, I wish somebody would have told me before I had a federal number. Like, I had caused so much harm that it was like, nah, it's like, you gotta write that. You gotta fix what you broke. So that's what we do.
And I think that's what's so inspirational about your story, because you're literally using everything that happened to you, good and bad, as part of your purpose. And I think so often we want to separate ourselves from the bad thing, almost like to prove like, I'm not that person anymore. But everything, a lot of the things that you're saying in your story, your testimony, is that you learned and you grew from that time. And so you're able to pull the good parts out of that. And now you're able to be where you are today. And I think that's really inspirational for people who are listening who have experienced something that might look like a setback. In all actuality, what was a setback probably saved your life because it was able to kind of shake you, wake you, and put you in the direction that you are now. And a lot of the things which I noticed too with people who sometimes are in the streets is that they have a lot of great qualities, leadership, and I mean, entrepreneurship, and they can sell ice to a freaking Eskimo, but they're just using those same things for bad instead of good. But it's really, you've got to be kind of talented and you've got to be a leader in order to survive in not even the streets of Kansas City, but really the streets anywhere. And so a lot of those qualities, I love that you kind of highlighted that because it shows that you can take those things and say, well, how can I use the same skill that I was using on the street or to harm somebody to now change the next generation. And so you brought up legacy, which I think is a great way to kind of wrap this up. Where do you see your organization going? I know that a lot of people that I've talked to so far from Kansas City are saying, I don't want to just have a Kansas City program or a Kansas City. You definitely have something that can touch the world. And so where do you see it going in the next 6 months, a year, and beyond that?
6 months, we're going to be expanding into more schools. The next 5 years, we're actually building a school. We're going to build a school that's from eighth grade to 25. So the goal is to catch them right before they're going into high school, so we can prepare them for the culture shift and the responsibilities of being in high school. And then what we realize is because we're kind of in this impoverished area, we still need those wraparound supports after high school. You need people to call and say, yo, what you doing? Like, you up? You good? Like, what's going on? And right now, there's no services that are like a wraparound like that. But the only way you can get them is if you, again, go get incarcerated, get on probation, or down and out, you know what I'm saying, go to the worst scenarios. And like, we don't need to be all the way out the box, you know what I'm saying, to be brought back into the box. So we got a paid internship programs, and we got some stuff on the horizon. And that's that part. But the expansion part is, so what we're doing is we're perfecting. We have a program inside of Lyrik called the interventions, and it's a school-wide intervention. So we go into schools and we work with administrators and teachers and students, whether that's from culture and climate to classroom presentation or classroom management. We do PDs. We actually go in. We'll set up a fundraiser for you. Whatever you need, we're a value add to school. We assess the problem and then we add value to it. So say there's a fundraising issue or there are money issues, we can come in and create a fundraiser, or we can partner together and go ahead and just knock this out. You know what I mean? Say it's an honors day. Like, yo, we that's what we are about. We're about making sure that young adults are getting the enrichment and the opportunities that they get. So, this is what we did in Northeast last year. We bought a game truck. You know what I mean? And they came and they were able to have the whole game truck. They're in the game truck, outside the game truck, playing all around. Yeah, you deserve that. Like, let us help support the work that you guys are doing. You know what I mean? So we're packaging the curriculum. I wrote the curriculum. So we're packaging it up. We're trademarking it up. We're just working on data to prove proof of concept over time to show you like this is really what it is, and not just because we say so. So we got qualitative and quantitative data, and we're packaging it up to be able to send out. Once we get something that's really robust, man, we want to take this. I tell my homies this all the time. This hustle got legs. It can go on the road. You know, we want to send it to the places where it needs it the most. Really, what it is CBT. Like, you can't trademark CBT, right? Like you can't. It's a thought. You can't put a stamp on a thought, right? But you can put a stamp on a process in which you add that thought through. And we think that we have a culturally responsive process that allows young adults not to see a window, but to see a mirror. Not to be able to look through something and something that they can be, but see something that, this really fits me. And we deserve that. I think education is shifting now. I think the world is starting to see, like, we're not the same. Like, stop saying that whole I'm colorblind. I don't get the privilege of waking up and saying I'm colorblind. I don't have that privilege. Stop saying no, it's okay. There's unity in differences. You know what I mean? Like, it's okay to be different. That's what makes us great. So in our demographic, we are relational learners. Period. Like we don't like stop trying to make us do your. Let us be great at what we are. We're relational learners. We need relational teachers. We need people to come in and build relationship before you start telling me anything, because I don't trust you. You know what I'm saying? Like we are products of survival. So meet us in our survival complex, right? And let us thrive. You made a monumental point. Like I'm using what I had been through for the good, but I've been had it, you know what I'm saying? And I didn't go buy none of this at Walmart. You know, this ain't at Target. They don't sell this at Target. And what I'm realizing is my young adults that I'm working with, because we're in the juvenile system, we're doing work, right? And what I'm realizing is these are geniuses. Like a million years ago, like to create fire, you were a genius. Survival was genius. Like only until we started doing like adding and subtracting and doing the scholastic pace to, for longevity, did we consider that genius? You know what I'm saying? But these kids are doing things that the average adult learned at 25. They're doing it at 14. They're doing it at 7. These are baby geniuses, but why are we're not qualifying that, right? And we're not giving credence to that. And that's where the relationship starts. Like, meet me here. Yes, I understand. Like, listen, you probably don't want to smoke weed in 7 o'clock in the morning at 14 years old. Probably don't want to do that. You know what I'm saying? But I understand, I understand you struggling. I understand it's going through real. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make, if you still choose to smoke after I make every statement of why this may not functionally work for your betterment or your long term, then that's the choice you got to make. But what I know I did was, from the power of the cognition, is I just deposited something that they're going to have to unpack one day. And a lot of times we expect to be able to give them something, and then in a week watch them regurgitate it back to us and be. That's not how this thought process works. You know what I'm saying? You might not be there for the fruit of your labors. Like sometimes you just got to till the ground. Sometimes you just got to plant, and sometimes you just got to watch grow. So,
yeah.
I mean, I'm very passionate about it. I'll talk about this stuff all day, but yeah, that's where it's said. And the legacy is more so in I'm trying to establish a legacy for my family. That's my biggest piece. I want to leave them a legacy. I want to leave them a chance to use their last name to get into a school. I want them to have the chance to get into political areas that they might not have been able to get in because their dad made some sacrifices when he was alive, that they would have some opportunities. I want to create a brand that they could be the directors of, or find funding for whatever it is that they want to create. I want them to have the Boaz story. I want them to have the David story. I want them to have the Abraham story. The opportunity to say, yo, we're a part of. Like my family is the givers. We're like the Levite. You know what I mean? Like we're the ones that we're going to get paid for doing the work. You know what I mean? I raise my kids like that. The greatest kings are servants. The greatest queens are servants. They serve. And if God loves us, He blesses us for our service. And I'm gonna teach my kids and pray that they pick up that mantle and keep it going. But that's who we are as a Hollins.
Yes. I love that. And I just thank you so much for everything that you're doing. Like it's not easy, but also I can tell that you're extremely passionate about it. And it's something satisfying when you hear somebody talk about something and you know that is their God-given, like deep in their soul. It's a different type of conversation than if you're just saying, oh, I saw this movie and I liked it. Like I can tell that this is something that you are passionate about. And I think not only will you create a legacy for your family, but you are changing and shifting an entire generation. And I think sometimes people don't realize it, that when you're working with youth, each child that you're touching and changing, that's affecting their course of their entire life and the people that they are going to touch. So I think it kind of brings it full circle, because you talked about how when that lady said, how many people does a drug dealer affect, right? Or somebody, and how many victims or whatever do they have? But now you literally have flipped it. And so now you are affecting generations for the better. And so I thank you, because not only does Kansas City need that, but there are so many other cities and places that need to have this kind of intentional thing for their youth. And I think it's so important that you're working with youth specifically because, I used to be a part of a prison ministry program. And I remember one of the things I said was, man, I wish we could get them before they got here. Because it's really hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard to talk to a 40-year-old about how they can switch their life around. But I'm like, man, if I would have caught him at 8 or at 12 or even 14, this would be a whole different conversation. And so I think it's really important that we don't wait until somebody does something wrong to then say, hey, you need help.
Right.
But to catch them when they're younger and start kind of picking up on some of those habits early on and saying, hey, why do you act like this? Why do you think like this? What's going on? And so to see you do that, I am so honored to have a conversation with you. I want to thank you again for being on my podcast. It's literally what it's all about, highlighting people like you. I have you on social media and all of that stuff, but I never would have known everything that really, the true passion behind everything that you're doing. So I want to thank you again, Kyle. It has been an awesome conversation.
Thank you for letting me ramble about my own life. And please continue to do this. It is so many stories. It is so many heroes. And like you create the platform, you let me spill it out. And sometimes it just takes a little rambling to get to the truth. You get to the truth, But yeah, there's so many people that I think you could do a lot of justice with that keep this going. I know you from really working with the youth. You know
Yes.
what I mean? She's authentic. She's really about this. Man, support her, get behind her, man. This, and I'm gonna be done. And after this, man, a wise man was being questioned by a reporter, and he was like, "What are we supposed to do about the white people telling our story wrong?" And he was like, "It's your responsibility to tell the story." You know what I mean? Like, why are we giving other cultures the responsibility to tell our story? And that's what you're doing right now. You know what I mean? Once you put this up, it is up and it is stuck. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
We don't know what alien going to come back and see and be like, so this is the content or this is what civilization was about. And you're putting things out into the universe and putting things out into God's creation that has enough substance to impact, whether it's, 6 people or maybe 20 years from now be 600 billion subscriber views. You know what I'm saying? Like, I want all of that up front. You know what I mean? But we just really don't know the impact of our work until God really, decides to do it. So you were doing a phenomenal thing. Please marathon this thing.
That's what I'm trying to do. I am. Thank you. I appreciate that because it's not easy. And it is hard sometimes when you're an entrepreneur or doing podcasting or helping youth or anything, because sometimes you often see people get quick success. Or they're talking about things that are like, what are you talking about? You just got 700,000 followers and you're reporting celebrity news. And I really wanted to make it a point to say, I want like my version of a celebrity or somebody who is walking in their purpose and changing other people's lives, not just performing for people, but actually like getting down in the dirt and saying, I'm going to help you be the best version of that you can be. And so that is why I'm so passionate about the podcast, because I'm like, there are people who like, I want to know your story. I don't want to know, this person who has every person in the world interviewing them. And I think what's so awesome is that eventually I'll be able to look back on this and be like, oh my goodness, I interviewed him and now he's on the cover of this. And I truly believe I'm interviewing people who are going to shake up the world. And this will just be some first or second, early interview that they did before the whole world knew who they are. So thank you again. This has been awesome. Yeah, thank you.
For sure. Anytime.
And I just want to thank everybody for listening to another episode of Unmute Your Mic. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow. You can also go to unmuteyourmic.org. There you can buy merchandise. You can find out more information about some of the things that we are doing, not just as a podcast, but in the community. I want to thank everybody again. And don't forget to be bold, be heard, and continue to unmute your mic. Thank you, Kyle.
For sure.
Thank you for tuning in to Unmute Your Mic. Be sure to tune in next time when Jessica takes her mic off mute as she continues her journey to find stories that inspire and uplift our communities.